Hello, hello, good morning. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the Sunday 10 a.m. technique at Beyond the Earth online crop. If you noticed the title as you clicked in, you may have thought, that sounds a little strange. And it's the ink pad stamps back. And today we are celebrating, as part of our online crop, Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And so I kind of went with a tongue-in-cheek title to my video today, these ink pad stamps back. And I'm just noticing that my camera is a little bit swiveled. Let's see if that helps. Might have just made it worse. You never know. Straightening things out. Good morning. It's Sunday morning. We're ready to craft, and we're going to be creating a fun card today, keeping with our theme of space and just for fun. And it's going to be using some fun techniques. So the ink pad stamps back is our theme for this morning's technique. If you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. If you're watching later on replay, you can drop a comment. I see that Laura is here. Good morning, starlings. And Deborah as well. Good morning, good morning. Hope everyone's having a good morning so far. Now, I just realized as we're sitting here that I did not cut a card base for myself. We are making a card today. However, this technique can be translated onto a layout as well. And so I'm just going to cut myself a card base. I want a 4 1/4 by 5.5 footprint when I'm done. So I'm going to take my 8.5 by 11 and cut it in half along the 11-inch side at 5.5. And then all I have to do is turn my card base and score it. So make sure you're using the scoring end for this, the gray one, the light gray one. And we're going to score it at 4 1/4. And there we go. We've got our card base ready to go. We're going to keep our trimmer handy because we're going to need that farther on. Now, when you score, you're going to get a side with a bump and a side with a dip. And you always want to fold it with the bump side to the inside of your card. The reason behind that is when you scored and the scoring tool pushed down into the paper, creating the dip, the paper that got pushed down the fibers got a little bit of a stretch. And so those fibers are more likely to bend crisply and neatly than the ones on the bump side, who basically just got a little bit compressed. Pardon me. So always score and then fold with the bump side to the inside. Now we're going to make a landscape card today. And speaking of landscapes, there's a lovely little paper pack. It's a 6x6, and it's called Everyday Skies. And there's gorgeous, sunny, cloudy days. There's sunsets. There's all sorts of things in there with lovely sky patterns, clouds and whatnot. But there are also some nighttime skies, and this is one of those. I've cut it down to 4 1/4 by 5.5, or 5.5 by 4 1/4. And you can see in there's some black, there's some azure afternoon, there's some night of navy, there's some misty moonlight, there's some fresh freesia, there's some petal pink. All sorts of lovely colors are in this, and it's a beautiful starry nighttime sky. Good morning, Joanne. So we're going to kind of use this as sort of a base for a little bit of a galaxy. The backside you can see is also kind of cool. Looks like shooting stars or a starry sky. But I wanted to go with the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to my card base. And I'm going to put a little extra adhesive, a little more than I normally would. Just because I feel like it today. Gonna use my take your pick tool and just lift those backings off like so. Now I want this sort of cloudy, wispy, nebula-like action happening at the bottom of my card. So I always end up making card fronts, sticking them down so that my fingertips can touch that score line, that fold. And I come at sort of a 45-degree angle, and I slide my paper towards my fingertips, making sure to line it up top and bottom, and then you just lay it down, and it almost always ends up perfectly covering my card front. If I tried to visually line it up, it would never work, but somehow my fingertips can feel things, even with carpal tunnel, better than my eyeballs can see things. So there we go. We've got our nice starry sky already started. And on top of that, we're going to add a few embellishments. And I do have a stamp set that has a moon. We used it the other day. That's a retired stamp set, though, so it's not something you can currently purchase. And I wanted to do something a little bit different. Now, Stampin' Up! Makes a lot of stamp sets, or several stamp sets, that are reversible, where you can stamp on both sides. And that's great. However, did you know that you can stamp on both sides of just about any stamp? The ones that work best, if you're trying to stamp both sides at the same time on the same spot, is something that's very symmetrical, so that it's like a mirror image. If they're not symmetrical, it's a little bit harder, but we have this stamp set, Planted Paradise, and we're going to be using that as part of our project today. Now, if you look at this, you'll notice there are two images here, a dark and a detailed. And that's telling you that you can stamp on the back of these, right? So a lot of these you can stamp on the back. Now, these don't line up correctly, but you can still stamp on the back. But these ones down here actually do line up pretty good. We're not going to line anything up, though. We just want to use the backs, because I was looking through my stamp sets for shapes that looked like terrestrial bodies. And so these two pots have sort of that nice curved planet-like shape to them. And so we're going to use those two stamps along with another stamp that I have used a little bit differently before. I have used this this little cookie here as a cookie. I have used it as ice cream, if you remember from just recently. And we're going to use that too as a planet. And then I'm also going to be using Trusty Tools, not for any planets or anything, but for our sentiment for the card. So let's get started, and I want to show you this ink pad stamps back technique that we're going to be learning today. So I'm going to start out with the biggest one because it's easiest to see on the biggest one. So what you want to do is you want to load your stamp on your block the wrong way around. Normally you have the smooth side against the block, and then the detailed side sticks out so that you get the detail when you stamp. This time, however, we are loading it with the detailed side towards the block and the smooth side where we're going to get the ink. Okay, I know this is weird. You can season your stamp, make sure it's all good and ready to go, and then you just need to pick some colors. So for this first one, I have decided to combine Gray Granite and Fresh Frisian. Now, Gray Granite is not listed, I don't think, amongst the colors in this Everyday Skies paper collection. But it's a nice neutral, and it looks planetary. You know, a lot of planets and asteroids and comets and stuff kind of look gray. So we're going to start with Gray Granite, but then we're going to add in some Fresh Freesia, which is one of the coordinating colors. So let's get started with this project. We've got our Gray Granite here. We've got our Fresh Frisian. I've just got a little Stampin' spot in that color. But how we want to do this is we want to ink up our pot, or otherwise our little planet, and we're going to stamp it once like that really quick. And does it matter that it's even? No. In fact, it's better if it's not even. Okay? Then we're going to take our fresh freesia and we're going to ink up our little small blending brush here, and we're just going to dab. We're going to make little dabby dabs of fresh freesia. We can even add more if we want. Little dabby dabs of fresh freesia here and there. And you have no idea what this is going to look like until you stamp it. So if you stamp it and you're not happy, then you just stamp it again. You try the process again. And I'm not 100% happy with that one. So what we can do is we can wash off our stamp, or even just stamp it again. Let's just stamp it again like that. And then we're going to ink it up. We're going to stamp it off. Okay. And then we're going to grab some more fresh freesia and add some of this lovely color here and there. And by doing it with the blending brush, it's creating a soft look. All right. Then we're going to stamp that down. Ooh, I like that one. Look at that. Isn't that fun? That is totally fun. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next one. We're going to leave that there. We're going to do some cutting later. We can move all these things out of the way. Let's move on to our second stamp. So this is the little pot that has the little flowers on it. Again, we have turned it around and now we've got just the plain back side. Hey, Robin. Nice to see you're watching. Did I say good morning, Joanne? Good morning, Joanne. Joanne says, off the topic, when you saw the salt and pepper, it reminded me of the dark side and the light side. Yes, yes. We're going to the dark side. That's why we're going to the back side today. So we've seasoned it up. Just rub it on there. Just make sure it's going to pick up some ink. And for this one, I've decided on Smoky Slate and Misty Moonlight. So I changed the gray that I'm using, and I've changed the accent color. So we've got some Smoky Slate and some Misty Moonlight. Let's get those open. And we're going to load up with the Smoky Slate first. We're going to stamp off like that. And then we're going to come in with our blue blending brush and just going to dab there for a second. And then we're going to add some Misty Moonlight to our little circle here. And we're going to stamp it down and see what we get. We're going to give it a minute to transfer. Good morning, Kimberly. Ooh, that's kind of fun. I think we're just going to leave that one the way it is. Look how that one turned out. Isn't that fun? I like that. Ooh. We could even, because this gray is a pretty dark color, we could actually do a second stamp and just see what we get. I tried this earlier and it made kind of a fun. Ooh, see, if you wanted an even lighter planet, that would work too. Isn't that fun? Okay, let's wash this one off. Well, we're not going to wash it off. We're going to set it aside. We'll wash it later because we're happy with what we got. The reason why you would wash if you wanted to try again is because I wouldn't take like the blue and stuff and then stick it back in the gray. I would wash it and start fresh. Okay, now we're to our little cookie here. And one thing I will tell you about the cookie, the other stamps that we were using had very, very large, solid areas that were going to pick up ink. Normally on the front side. The cookie has outlines that picks up the ink. So if you have stamped this once and you want to make another one, what you're going to need to do is to actually lift the edge and release the vacuum that will be created from stamping down. because as you stamp, you're actually going to push some of that air out that's trapped underneath. And then the second time you go to stamp it, you will definitely see some bleed through of the image from the other side. Okay, so this is a one step thing. So you get your stamp on there, make sure it's good to go. And this time we're going to go kind of different. We're going to use some Crumb Cake and some Cajun Craze just to add a little bit of different color. Cajun Craze was coordinating color with this designer series paper. A lot of the sunset ones had a lot of Cajun Craze in them. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to ink up with the Crumb Cake. Let's see if this is going to go. And then we're going to lightly dab it. Okay. And then we're going to come in with some Cajun Craze. I'm just going to tap off a little bit because it's a strong color. And we're going to add some Cajun Craze to our cookie. And we're going to stamp it down. And there we go. Look at that. We've created some fun texture on there with that Cajun Craze. Just a little bit different color. Now I'll show you what happens if you stamp this one down hard. Just so you know why I wanted you to do that lifty thing if you do it twice. You stamp it down hard, then you add your ink, and then you stamp it again. Oh, it's not going to do it this time. Last time, if I did it too hard, it pushed air out, and then you actually ended up with almost like a nuclear safety sign in the middle because it was creating a little bit of suction in between those little hearts. But it's actually doing pretty good here. Now I'm trying to decide which of those two I want. Alrighty. Let's close these up. But that is a fun technique to stamp on the back side of your stamps. Apply ink to the back side. All right, now let's decide which of these lovely ones we wanted. We wanted this one in the middle here, although this one actually, you know what, now that I'm looking at it, it's not terrible. You know what, I think I'm going to use this one. I'm going to rough cut first. The reason I'm choosing to use this one is because this one kind of got little edges of the blending brush. Weird little marks there. And then I'm going to use this one. And then which of those two do I want? I think I'm going to go... you know what? I think I'm going to go with this one. Funnily enough, I was trying to make it look bad and it worked out nice. All right, now, don't be concerned that I have now used a lot of paper here. We're actually going to use this paper for this project. So what we're going to do is we're going to fussy cut right on the edge of the image. I know we're breaking this rule a lot the last few days where we're fussy cutting and we're not leaving a halo. But we are still following all the other rules. And if you make this a little wonky, this one is actually wonky already because it's a nubbly edge of a cookie. It actually plays into the whole this is a planet thing. So don't worry if your edges are a little wonky, all right? And then we'll just go around this one here. Like so. Right on the edge of our image. I love how the gray and the Misty Moonlight work together. I mean, I like blues, so it's just right up my alley, right? This one actually got a lot of texture in it, which I like. Now, are we concerned that these are only half circles? We are not, because we're going to make that work with the design of our card. Okay, so there's lots of ways around this. Now, you can use all sorts of different shapes for this. I have even made, you know, stone work out of alphabets. You know, just pick the weird shaped letters and just go with it. Now, what we're going to do with this excess is I want to I want to add a little bit of dimension behind my pieces. So actually, you know what? I'll just trim one of these ones that I've already stamped out. I'm going to trim this a little bit small, like this. And then I can be a lot faster than going around that one. Okay, so I've trimmed it a little bit small, and now I can go ahead and I can, let me just break this apart a little bit so I'm not fighting all the paper. Trim it again. And you can, this is a tip that Allison likes to share a lot, is that you can use scrap cardstock for adding dimension to your projects. And so in this kind of situation where we've used a lot of cardstock to get the look that we want, it works out well because we can go ahead and grab that cardstock and use it for dimension. And we're not wasting, well, we're wasting a little bit, but we're getting more use out of it than just stamping off and whatever. Now, you can also flip over to the back side if you want. So let me see. We're going to do one more layer of this. So we've got 4 layers of cardstock, which is thinner than using a dimensional. Okay, so there's our 4 layers of that. And then let's grab this guy here. I'm going to cut it a little smaller. Like so. And then, you know what, we can just grab this guy too. We're going to make a couple layers for this one. Like that. It doesn't even have to be shaped. You could just have strips or chunks. So all these little pieces could still be used for bits and chunks. I'm going to pop those to the side. All right, so let's layer these up a bit. And for that, we're going to just grab our liquid glue. If you're using scrap paper that has like dark colors stamped on it like that, and you're worried, just make sure the top one is a little plainer. And then just stack them up, quick and easy. We're just creating some dimension. It's not fancy. There we go. And then on our top layer, we can add our actual piece. Make sure that we get it on there nice. There we go. And then for this one, let's stick these guys together. Like that. And one more. This is our final layer. There we go. Lovely. Okay, now we can also add a little bit extra ink onto some of these if we want. We can darken them up, but I think I'm going to leave mine, well, no, let's add a little bit. Okay, so this one we had some gray granite on. Let me just grab a little bit of foam. I'm going to just use a weird side. Grab some gray granite. And let's add a little bit of extra around there like that. We're going to give it a dark side. Okay. And then for our blue one, we have the Smoky Slate. It's always good to use the same color you already used. And let's just turn this around the other side. We got our Smoky Slate here. Let's add some dark side to our little planetoid or whatever it is. And then for our last one, we had the Crumb Cake. I'm reading Robin's comments. No such thing as rules. Yeah. All right. And let's add a little bit of crumb cake to this side. Nice. Just a little bit of dimension. Why not? You could even splatter on these. You could do 101 things to jazz them up as much as you want. But we're going to have these kind of coming in on our sky. And once you see them on here, you're kind of like, ooh, that's what we're doing, right? So we're going to have some planets. And you'll notice that we've got some flat sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to jazz up those flat sides by creating a frame for our card. And to do that, in the absence of having die cuts at the moment, we're going to take a piece of 5.5 by 4 1/4. This is the brushed silver foil. It comes in a pack with silver and gold. And we are going to do some gutting out. And I am actually going to turn my trimmer around, because in order to gut this out, I have to see my little ruler here. And this is where the number 1 is as opposed to there. And I want to do it closer to my face. Sometimes things that you do crafting, you need to do closer to your face. Oh, no such thing as rules. Gotcha. All right. So for this, we're going to need our cutting blade, and I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch frame. So what that means is on here, we've got our inches going along here, and I have a 1/2 inch on the opposite side of my cutter here, or on the left side. So I'm just going to line up with that 1/2 inch, make sure we're lined up here. We're going to bring our cutting blade in, the dark one, and I'm going to put it in about the middle of my card when I set this down. And what I want to do is I want to trim from the center here down to 1/2 inch and up to 3 3/4. I got to remember that. It's 3 3/4. So I'm going to come down to 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to go up to 3 3/4. There we go. And then I can turn around to the other side, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line it up at 1/2 inch to the left of my blade there, and set it down in the center. And I'm going to come down to 1/2 inch on my little ruler here, 1/2 inch, and I'm going to go up to 3 3/4. This was the whole reason I bought this particular trimmer, was because I wanted to be able to gut things out. And then we're going to line it up here. Again, drop the blade down in the center so we're not accidentally trimming off the edge. And this time we're going to go down to 1/2 inch and up to 5 inches. So down to 1/2 inch and up to 5 inches. And then we're going to turn it to the other side, and you can see it's already coming apart nicely. Line it up at 1/2 inch. Make sure your blade's in the center, and then come down to 1/2 inch and up to 5 inches. My rotary trimmer, which I absolutely love, is not accurate enough to do that. And so I was super excited to get this trimmer just for that. And now this piece is perfectly lovely, and I can use it on another project, but I have created a nice fun frame, and I can add this to my card front. So now you can see that we're going to end up hiding those little planet flat edges in our frame. Okay? So let's stick down our little planets here. Let's add some adhesive to the back. And we want to keep in mind that where the edge of our frame is going to be. Okay? And then this last one, I'm actually going to use some dimensionals on it. We're going to give it a nice a nice pop up with some dimensionals. And my frame is going to have dimensionals, but I'm going to wait to put those on because I'm going to need to adjust for where my planets sit. Okay, so we've got our 1/2 inch, this would go easier with tweezers. We've got a 1/2 inch coming in and a 1/2 inch coming in. So I'm going to put my planet right there. When it's just got a couple layers, but it does give some lift. You can see a little shadow there. And then let's come in with our second little planet. And I'm just kind of judging where I want my planets. I'm judging. And this guy's going to come in just a little bit left of center, like so. And then this last one I can stick on once we're done, because it's not going to interfere with my frame at all. Okay, so our frame now, we need to work around the planets. And I think the easiest way to do that is to stick some of the dimensionals right to our base. So if I use these nice little edgy ones like this, I can get a nice little bit of an edge around my planet like that. Make sure I'm not going off the edge. And let's come to this side. Can do the same thing down here. Oops. Those little edgy ones come in handy, don't they? There we go. And then for the top side, see how I'm lining it up right beside? So I can kind of judge where I need to put more dimensionals. I can just add them. Right, now I know I can go all the way down this side. Easy peasy. And I can go a little bit here, but let's bring this up. Now I can see where I can add my dimensionals. Like that. And then, whoop, we'll come to this side, and I can add another little edge piece. It's like flipping grilled cheese sandwiches going around with a frame, right? When you have to add dimension. Now you just have to make sure that when you pick up your frame to stick it on, you pick it up and stick it down in the fashion that you actually adhered everything, right? There we go. Okay, so let's take the backings off these, if we can. That one decided not to come. And here, and then we're going to try and do this without turning it around too many times. Peel these off. Now, adding something with dimension that you got to line up around an edge is not an easy task, okay? So you just have to bear with yourself, and if it gets a little wonky, it's kind of one of those grin and bear it, because with all this foam tape, you're not going to really be able to adjust much after it's down, okay? That's just how it is. So, let me see. There we go. We're going to flip. And I like to turn this way, just like when I'm putting the front on. And I'm going to come close to myself. And I'm going to try and line up my top and bottom with my edge before I get too involved. And then we're going to stick it down and hope for the best. There we go. And then our last little planet going on. This is so fun. I like this. All right, and we're going to try and keep our shadows in the same spots as our other ones. And we'll just stick that right in there like that. Then for our sentiment, I decided to bring in yet something else just to add a little pizzazz because, you know, why not? So from the, let me just remind myself of the name, Take to the Sky Designer Series paper, there was a Night of Navy paper that had like architectural drawings or engineering drawings of airplanes, which I thought was kind of spacey and cool and, you know, had to do with aeronautics. So we're going to use that to stamp out our sentiment. And from the Trusty Tools stamp set, we've got the You're the Most Awesome stamp. And then let's grab our scrap piece of paper. Do I have a scrap piece of paper? I usually have 100. There we go. A little scrap piece of paper. Gonna scooch that out of the way. We're gonna do a little heat embossing on here with some silver. Why not? We're in space. We've already got a silver frame, so I've got my silver embossing powder. We're gonna ink this up with some Versamark. I'm gonna try and stamp it in the center. You know what? I gotta come closer to me. Otherwise, I won't be able to see what I'm doing. You're the most awesome. There we go. And sprinkle on some powder. Grab it with our tweezers to make our life easier. We're going to sprinkle on some powder. Woo, got half the jar. That's okay. We're going to tap, tap, tap. Give it a little check to make sure there's not too many stray embossing powders. And then it's always good when you're doing something that's really small like that particular piece to already have those tweezers stuck on there because you're going to need them to hold while you heat emboss. So you might as well have them stuck on there, and then it's also easier to pick up your image once it's on there. Once you got all that embossing powder. So let's heat up our heat tool, and then we're going to hit it. And so right now you can barely see that sentiment on there. It's just dry and powdery. But in just a quick moment, everything's going to change. There it goes. You can see it transforming. I love how it just kind of appears. As if out of nowhere. There we go. Can you see that shining in the lights? You're the most awesome. My video is not catching up with me, so I can't tell if I'm getting it in the light for you to see. Oh, there we go. Yep, it is. You're the most awesome. And then we're going to add that on here as well. Let's add a bit of dimensionals under there. We're going to need 2 kind of in the center-ish. There we go. And then let's use our tweezers to help us align that. I want it to kind of go off the edge of the frame and kind of hit that little planet as well, because that'll kind of make it stand out a bit. And there we go. Let's add in some blingity bling. So I've got just a couple little clear sparkles, the Rhinestone basic jewels here. So let's grab some of those. A little jewel. A little one there. I only got 4 of them, so let's use all 4. I know that's weird. I know we don't usually do it like that, but we're going to. Let's add another little one over there because I also have on hand my neutral matte dots, which I thought might be interesting as like littler space debris. And in here we've got black, which is kind of fun. We can make a black hole, but there's also sort of this basic beige one, and I think that would kind of blend in with our little planets as well. So let's also add a couple of those. And let's take a look. Maybe one more, just a little one, way off over here in the distance. How fun is that? You're the most awesome. We started out with that everyday skies paper in the background, and then we layered up with our stamping on the back, the ink pad stamps back to create those fun planets, and layered them up with different amounts of cardstock in behind and dimensionals to create a little bit of dimension in our scene. Then, of course, stamping out with the silver embossing powder, our sentiment, and then adding in some sparkle and some bling to create a little bit more dimension in our sky. Now, I had considered making this a shaker, and I had thought about using the Itty Bitty Bouquet mix for that, but then I decided no, I would keep it a little more conservative, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, and from the Trusty Tools, we're going to grab this little sentiment here, and walk that off, and we're going to make ourselves a nice little Father's Day card. So we're going to stamp this on the inside. Now, you wouldn't have to do this, but this kind of makes a nice masculine card, I think. So there's our Happy Father's Day. And then I think we will use the Knight of Navy on the inside. Just ink this up. This is always a challenge, right? You've completed your whole card, and now you're going to do something right on it and hopefully not mess it up. There we go. Happy Father's Day. Now, it doesn't have to be a Father's Day card, but that's what we're going to use it for. And so there we go. A fun, space-themed, happy May the 4th Star Wars Day card doing the ink pad stamps back. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you create something using these techniques, be sure to snap a photo of it and pop it in the comments where I post the photos of my card, and then we can all see and be inspired by your artwork as well. Have a wonderful rest of your morning, and we will be on at 11:30 for Chat and Craft. We'll see you then. Toodaloo. Bye.